Week 2 is almost in the book, so I'm bringing you 5 moves to make heading into Week 3 fantasy football. If you like fantasy football, hit that like and subscribe button as we are on the way to 2,000 subscribers here on the 4for4 YouTube channel. Now, we're going to bring you some waiver wire targets. We're going to bring you some trades, so let's start off with the waiver wire targets. We started off with 3 guys that already should be on all rosters. Now, Quinshon Judkins and Skattebo, they're both rostered in about 80 to 75% of the leagues. So if you're somehow in that little like 20 to 25% of leagues that they're not rostered, 100%, go make sure that they're added. The third player in that list is going to be Bhayshul Tuten, who had an absolute monster Week 2 game with 15.4 fantasy points in full PPR. He's only 45% rostered. So if somehow you're in that 55% of leagues where Bhayshul Tuten isn't rostered, make sure to go add them. But let's move on to a player that should be available, highly regarded in most leagues. This is going to be Troy Franklin for the Denver Broncos. Now, when we're talking about Troy Franklin over on Sleeper, he's only 8% rostered currently at this current moment. But dude's been absolutely electric through 2 games. In Week 1, had 8 fantasy points, 6 targets for 4 receptions. And then in Week 2 versus the Indianapolis Colts, goes absolute gangbusters with 24 fantasy points in full PPR, had an 83% snap share, up from the 59% snap share in Week 1. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 89 yards, 1 total touchdown. Now, when we're looking at this offense, not only do you have Courtland Sutton kind of being the main pass catcher, but we're seeing Troy Franklin, who was not a highly drafted prospect. We know he had that connection with Bo Nix from college. A lot of the arguments against Troy Franklin was just there was a lack of speed. Just his overall athletic profile wasn't what we like to see with a wide receiver coming into the NFL, but he is big, 6'3", 180. So seeing him already being the number 11 wide receiver on the season is exciting, and especially considering the fact that he's 8% rostered. You definitely want to be going and targeting Troy Franklin if you need some wide receiver help on the end of your bench. My second waiver wire player that you need to be adding heading into Week 3 fantasy football, it is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson for the New York Giants. And Mr. Wan'Dale, number 8 overall wide receiver on the season so far, and in Week 2 put up 28.2 fantasy points in full PPR, had a 70% snap share, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 142 yards, and 1 total touchdown. And we saw Russell Wilson absolutely cooking against the Dallas Cowboys, throwing all over the yard. And when we're looking at the overall snap shares, Wan'Dale Robinson didn't even get the same amount of snaps that Malik Nabers and Darius Slayton did. Darius Slayton had 66 for Malik Nabers, and then Wan'Dale Robinson had 47. Now, he had almost 9 less routes run. He wasn't on the field in those 2 wide receiver sets, but he had almost the same amount of targets as Malik Nabers. He had 10. Malik Nabers had 13. And so just overall, these are the 2 pass catchers that the Giants are going to be funneling the ball through. Whether it's Russell Wilson starting, whether it's going to be Jackson Dart at some point this season, I don't know. But if I need some wide receiver help, I know the waiver wire is a little bit thin and grim this week. You could maybe mention some other guys. These are the 2 targets if I need help getting some fantasy football production on my team. It's going to be Troy Franklin. It's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson heading into Week 3 fantasy football. Moving on into some trades, the first player we're going to talk about trading for, it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you are a Brian Thomas Jr. owner, I am so sorry. I am holding on. But if I don't have Brian Thomas Jr., I'm definitely trying to get a piece because it's been super, super disappointing first 2 weeks of the season with 9 fantasy points and with 8.9 fantasy points. And especially if you had to take Brian Thomas in the back end of the first, the early part of the second, which is where he was going in fantasy football drafts, you're definitely either not winning games or you're starting to panic pretty heavily. And so for me, the big thing is with Brian Thomas Jr. that we're seeing right now is if you look on Twitter, if you go look and see what Jacksonville Jaguars fans are saying, and you're looking at, you watch any of his snap share, his missed catches, he's not only missing catches, he's kind of shying away from contact, especially over the middle. Now, we can't necessarily blame him, but definitely had led the NFL. He has 8 drops on the season so far. So it's almost like there's just something that is not going right, whether it's a lot of people are saying he had a major hit versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in the preseason that's almost made him a little bit gun-shy going over the middle. I don't know if that's the case because we saw Brian Thomas Jr. be absolutely electric last season. Now, the part that we did see last season was his overall points per game was a little bit different with Mac Jones. Way better with Mac Jones than it was with Trevor Lawrence. So we're seeing maybe Trevor Lawrence throw a few more hospital balls. I know for me, as somebody that owns a lot of Trevor Lawrence, I haven't necessarily, he had a good week 2 from a fantasy football perspective, but he hasn't been the most accurate quarterback so far this season. And so if you're trying to get Brian Thomas Jr., I would say now is the perfect time because someone's probably willing to sell at a third or fourth or maybe in fifth round value to try to get some points to try to, if they have Brian Thomas Jr., there's a good shot that they're 0-2 so far this season, and they probably want to get going. So, like I said, not great from a fantasy football points per game perspective, but if you go over to this fantasy football calc database, we can start to look at what some real life trades that have been going down for Brian Thomas Jr. are happening. So a lot of these are from yesterday. We got Brian Thomas Jr. for Breece Hall and Hollywood Brown. Now, as much as we're going to talk about Breece Hall a little bit later in this, I think if I went the ultimate level upside, I do want a Brian Thomas. Now, other trade we see, someone trades away Brock Bowers for Brian Thomas Jr. and Tucker Kraft. We just saw Tucker Kraft absolutely explode in that Thursday night football game. Give me the Brian Thomas Jr. Tucker Kraft side over Brock Bowers. Someone traded Chase Brown straight up for Brian Thomas. Like I said, Chase Brown was being drafted in the back end of the second, early part of the third. Both of them are struggling. So just kind of trading two players that are struggling to each other. Someone traded Josh Jacobs for Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt and Brian Thomas Jr. I love myself some Josh Jacobs, but I do want that Brian Thomas Jr. and Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt side. So I think there are deals that you can go get done for Brian Thomas Jr. right now. Now, if he's got a little bit of the scaredness of being hit, I can't attest to that because I've never been hit across the middle by an NFL safety, nor do I want to. So I'm sure it's not the most pleasant thing, but I just hope he can kind of get back to it because he is getting, a ton of eyes on him at all times because of what he did last year. But we do need to start to hopefully see some bits of life for Brian Thomas Jr. as this third, move to make. I do want to be trying to trade for Brian Thomas Jr. In week 3 fantasy football. Now, moving on to move to make number 4, it's going to be going out and trying to trade for Brian Thomas Jr.'s teammate in Travis Etienne. And Travis Etienne has kind of been the savior of a lot of people's maybe hero RB builds, or even, maybe you went 0 RB and somehow drafted Travis Etienne and this is the 7th, 8th round of your fantasy football league, because we're looking at Travis Etienne, 18 fantasy points in week 1, and then follows that up in week 2 versus Cincinnati with 16.9 in full PPR. Really great effort. He's been averaging anywhere between a 62 and a 65% snap share for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the part that people are not going to be happy with when it comes to this is seeing Bhayshul Tuten get a ton of run. And like we said, we saw Bhayshul Tuten, when we're looking at him in week 2, get 15.4 fantasy points, had a 25% snap share, 8 attempts for 42 yards, but he did take that catch. He had 2 catches for 32 yards and 1 total touchdown. And so a lot of people are going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going to be this workload looking like for Travis Etienne moving forward, especially with Bhayshul Tuten starting to take more and more of the snaps. Now, if you look at the overall snap counts, Travis Etienne still had 47. Bhayshul Tuten had 18. LaQuint Allen had 11. So is it still kind of a 3-headed committee here where Travis Etienne still getting predominantly the most of it? Had 14 carries compared to Bhayshul Tuten's 8. I just think Bhayshul Tuten's going to continue to push Travis Etienne. And I think the people that are a little bit nervous about Travis Etienne might want to try to quote-unquote sell him high. But I want to be taking the opportunity to go try to get Travis Etienne. So let's look at some trades that have gone down for Travis Etienne here over the last few days. Someone traded Tedero McMillan straight up for Travis Etienne. I think that's a pretty fair deal. Just kind of depends on what side of the coin you need. Do you need a wide receiver? Do you need a running back? Especially if you took maybe Travis Etienne in that sense was like your RB3, cool. But on a lot of teams, Travis Etienne's my RB2. And if he's my RB2, I 100% want him to stay as my RB2 or try to get him as my RB2, especially if I have a ton of depth at wide receiver. Someone traded away A.J. Brown for Travis Etienne. As much as I talked about A.J. Brown being a buy in last week's 5 moves to make video, I think if you are still on the fence with A.J. Brown, the lack of passing attempts for the Philadelphia Eagles is something that I'm definitely looking to get off of, and I will 100% go get myself some Travis Etienne there instead of A.J. Brown. Next trade we can look at, it's going to be Travis Etienne and Jordan Addison for Brian Thomas. Ooh, this is interesting. Like I said, I'm a huge Brian Thomas believer. If we're looking here, the trade calc, of course, is going to lean the direction of Brian Thomas. I probably still lean the direction of Brian Thomas, but with Jordan Addison going to be coming off suspension here over the next few weeks, and then just one more week of Travis Etienne hopefully still being the bell cow, you could definitely like that. So for me, Travis Etienne is my second trade that I will be making and my 4th move to make. My 5th move to make, it is going to be getting Breece Hall, going and trying to trade for Breece Hall from the New York Jets. And the New York Jets looked absolutely crappy in week 2 fantasy football. If you started Justin Fields like I did in quite a few leagues, I am so sorry. You probably lost your week 2 matchup with that absolutely desolate game from Justin Fields. And that impacted Breece Hall. The Buffalo Bills team getting up early, them having to kind of not go towards the running game like they did in week 1 versus Pittsburgh. And Breece Hall only put up 5.8 fantasy points in week 2. But you're going to say to me, Caleb, why are you trying to trade for Breece Hall? When we're trying to look at the overall snap share, this is where it gets interesting. So Breece Hall played 30 snaps. Isaiah Davis had 10. Braylon Allen had 9. And so really from a perspective of a 63% snap share for Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis had a 21, and then Braylon Allen had 19. This was a great, absolutely great snap share for Breece Hall. So with him increasing to that 63%, he also played 73% of that snaps in garbage time, which is awesome. So with the ability for him to be getting on the field more and with that increased workload, which we clearly saw he can handle and he has the explosion to do, I think going forward with some better matchups coming down the pike of Tampa Bay, of Miami, of Dallas. Now, Denver in week 6 is going to be pretty hard, but hey, at least for the foreseeable next 3 to 4 games, we're going to feel pretty comfortable with Breece Hall, especially if you can get him as your RB2, even potentially if you're maybe a 0 RB team and he's your RB1. I want to be taking a shot on Breece Hall, just knowing the fact that this offense is going to have better days. Now, what's going to happen with Justin Fields, especially with concussion protocol, because we have seen that read option been pretty effective for Breece Hall, especially in that week 1 game versus Pittsburgh. Let's go analyze some trades that people are making right now for Breece Hall. So someone bought Breece Hall for James Conner super low. We saw James Conner start to concede some touches to Trey Benson, especially in the 3rd down workload in week 2 of fantasy football. So definitely a good trade if you could trade a guy like a James Conner to go get a Brian Thomas Jr. Someone traded away a Zay Flowers for Breece Hall. As much as I love what we've seen from Zay Flowers, maybe it's the year 3 breakout for Zay. I do want Breece Hall there. Someone traded, and I'm trying to find ones that are pretty fair. Someone traded Jackson Smith and Jigba for DJ Moore and Breece Hall. Listen, I guess if you need some running back help, maybe JSN was your wide receiver 2. Maybe went heavy wide receiver and somehow got JSN in the 3rd round, and JSN is like your wide receiver 3. Probably not, because he's absolutely balling right now. I'd probably take the JSN side, but I can understand maybe tearing off an asset like a JSN if you could get like a DJ Moore, Breece Hall. I prefer maybe a little bit better wide receiver than a DJ Moore, but that is just me. Someone traded pretty high, traded off Romo Dunze and this amazing 2-week stretch to go get a Breece Hall. I love that. Someone traded a Chuba Hubbard for a Breece Hall. I definitely love that. So those are some moves that I would be trying to make, some real life trades that are going down in leagues to try to go get a Breece Hall, because I think Breece Hall definitely, we have seen it before. He has the ultimate game-like wrecking explosion. He's got the pass catching ability, everything that you want in a running back. Just this week 2 game, the Jets were not able to get on track. And this is not an A.J. Brown where we're worried about the opportunity share. I mean, he still got 10 total attempts, had 3 targets for 2 receptions in this terrible game where he only had 5.8 points. So definitely a bounce back is going to be in the cards for Breece Hall in week 3 or week 4. And so I want to be going and trying to trade and add Breece Hall to my team if I can. If you like fantasy football, hit that like and subscribe button. If you want to check out any of the amazing tools on the 4for4 website, use code YouTube, get you 25% off a plan. It has a really great start sit tool. We're answering all the start sit questions here, but if you want to absolutely do all of your start sit questions that you have each and every week, definitely go check out the 4for4 website, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.